Thank you, Lan, for your support. Very much appreciated. Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the low-life Marrow Shards Necromancer, and with this build we're trying to use a Necromancer without minions. However, we're still going to run one minion, the Golem, and that's just so that we have a place to put Dreadshade so that we can buff ourselves and give ourselves, 100% more damage and 45% more cast speed. It's such a huge buff that you really don't want to go without that. However, we won't be using minions for damage. We're going to be doing all of the damage ourselves. And because we want to boost our damage, we're going to go ahead and sink ourselves into the Lich tree, and we're going to take the Leech to power at a 10 times ratio so that we won't have any Leech, but we're going to have a massive amount of damage. We're going to run it as a low life build, and the reason for that is it synergizes the best with Marrow Shards, which doesn't cost mana. It costs a percentage of your maximum health in order to cast it. So we're going to be able to just cast it non-stop, and the more we cast it, the more ward we have. So our offense is leading to more defense, which is huge and a great synergy. And basically the way Marrow Shards is going to work is you're going to fire off a Marrow Shard. It's got pretty good, decent damage itself, but wherever you point your mouse is where it's going to explode, and then it's going to fire off Bone Splinters, and Bone Splinters are the things that we have doing the most damage. We have a bunch of more modifiers and crit multi for it, and a lot of crit chance, and those are going to be what kind of has the cone-shaped AoE that's going to clear the screen for you. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and how it all works. For skills, I'm running Dreadshade, Marrow Shards with +2 levels, Summon Bone Golem, Wandering Spirits, and Transplant. For Dreadshade, we have to have at least one minion in order to be able to cast Dreadshade on them, so we went with the Golem, as it's going to be the tankiest thing that we can have out there for the longest period of time, and not have to keep recasting. You will have to resummon him, but it's only a once every few minutes thing. Now with Dreadshade, we still went with the Pernicious Pact and the Egoism. This is going to let the minion always crit, but we don't really care about his damage. It's more for that 6-second cooldown so that I can put it on auto cast and not have to worry about manually casting it every 10 to 15 seconds myself. You can spec out of these if you would like to, and you can put them elsewhere, although there's nowhere else that's really going to be super beneficial that's going to outweigh the time that I save by just having it on autocast and not even having to worry about it. Now the point of Dreadshade is that when you're inside the aura, so you want 1 point in symbiotic apparition so that you get benefited from all the benefits of the tree while inside the aura. Now while you're in it, you'll get 60% increased damage, and with 3 points in Dying Coven, you'll get 45% increased cast speed. And then with 3 points in Flesh Harvest, those stats will get boosted along with the armor per point of intelligence, which we have over 50 intelligence, so you'll have over 1,000 flat armor just from this skill alone. All three of those stats will be boosted by the more health that your Golem is missing. So as he gets down all the way down to 99% of his missing health, almost all of these stats will be doubled. You'll have 90% cast speed, 120% increased damage, and double the armor, so you'll have over 2,000 flat armor from the intelligence. That's as long as you stay inside of the aura while you have it active on your Golem. For Marrow Shards, again, we have +2 points in this. If you don't have the 2 extra points, they're not mandatory. You can take out of the double cast chance, or you can take out of the extra damage against bleeding enemies. But with the setup here, we have 1 point in Bone Knives. This makes it to where Marrow Shards will deal a lot more damage, but it no longer can pierce. Then with 1 point in Splintering Impact, Marrow Shards will now destroy itself right after it's hit an enemy, so right behind the enemy, and it will make the Bone Splinters that shoot off in a cone. With 1 point in Bone Splinters down below, it now also makes a cone when it's destroyed. It's basically the same effect, but this takes away a bit of range, but what we're trying to unlock is the 1 point in Marrow Caster. So now the Marrow Shards will destroy itself wherever you point your mouse, which could be right next to you or it could be really far away, and then that's where it'll destroy itself and make the Bone Splinters. So you have a lot more control over where that cone's going to start, and if you have enemies really close to you, you can spam it basically right on your toes and get that cone effect happening right at your feet. Then we have 4 points in Carving for 120% more hit damage with Bone Splinters. 3 points, so Bone Splinters has a much higher base crit chance. 1 point in Obliteration for the critical multiplier. 2 points for them to make bleed chance of 100%, and that's to unlock the Crimson Ivory so we can get 75% more hit damage against bleeding targets. So you can see there's a lot of more hit damage. We got 75% more hit damage, 120% more hit damage, 75% hit damage again, and then we got some crit multi to go with it. For Summon Bone Golem, we have the Golem set up to be a tanky boy. We got 5 points in health and armor, both flat and percentage increase. 4 points in Tower Bones is going to allow him to create much more threat to take away the threat off of you, as well as increase his size. And then we have 3 points in Amalgam of Mages to unlock the Bone Hail. Now we went with the Bone Nova chance so that there would be a chance when we hit him with what was going to be us being able to target minions with the Marrow Shards, but what we found is we started killing him so fast because we were doing so much damage that I ended up specking out of it. But the Bone Nova chance still stands, so when he gets hit, and since he has the taunt, a lot of things will go after him. He'll have a chance to have a retaliatory Bone Nova go off and just do a little bit of extra damage. If you want though, you can completely unspec out of this and you can put more into health regen or something else that benefits him as well. Maybe even turn him into a Spectral Golem so that he has a lot of dodge chance, so his survivability will go up quite a bit. For the Wandering Spirits, have this set up pretty much the normal way where we're casting as many of them as possible. To make sure we didn't run into mana issues, however, instead of putting into Spectral Scorn, I put 2 points into Medium for that mana efficiency. But the most important nodes is take 1 point in Spectral Putrescence. This is going to let them attack from a distance with a poison bolt, basically. That's going to have a 100% chance to poison on hit. Remember, they get your stats, so if you have poison chance or lots of poison damage, it's going to boost the amount of damage that they do. And then to get as many of them as possible, we have 5 points in Thin Veil, 4 points in Lingering Souls, and 3 points in Spirit Swarm. For Transplant, we just wanted to have a movement skill on the toolbar, especially since we're the ones doing the damage and not hiding behind a wall of minions. Being able to move quickly and transplant away from things is kind of important for this build. We went with 3 points in Bone Armor so that we have Bone Armor for 4 seconds, and will take less damage and have more armor while it is active. Now you can teleport every 5.2 seconds, but Bone Armor itself has a 10-second cooldown, so you can't just keep transplanting and get 100% uptime of it. Bone Armor naturally lasts for 4 seconds, but with 3 points in Apothesy, we have 3 additional seconds, so we'll actually have 7 seconds duration, which means you can have up to 70% uptime of it. And 2 points in Plated Bone gives it an increased effect. I also worked my way up the right side so that when we do transplant, we get 30 mana just in case we happen to be running low on mana if we've had to summon the Bone Golem over and over again. And then we also have 2 points in Dance of Blood to cast 2 Rip Bloods whenever we transplant. For passives, I have 21 points in the Acolyte base class, with 8 points in Blood Aura, 8 points in Forbidden Knowledge, and 5 points in Blood Pact. In the Lich, I have way more than 25 points, but this caps out at 25 because this actually goes by the number of lines you've gone up, and since it's locked at the 25 point line, it's capped at 25. But we actually have 24, 25, 33, 41. We have 41 points inside of the Lich tree, with 8 points in Crippling Insight, 8 points in Survival of the Cruel, 8 points in Dance with Death, 1 point in Hollow Lich. This is where a lot of your damage comes from. Health Leech is converted to increase damage at a 10 times ratio. 8 points in Apocrypha for more int and spell damage, and 8 points in Unclosing Wounds for 112% increased damage, and the offset is that your current health is drained, which again just adds to more defense for you because the lower your life is, the more ward generation you get. And then 49 points in the Mastered Necromancer, with 8 points in Exilor of Hunger, 5 points in Reclamation of Souls, 10 points in Cursed Blood, 3 points in Putrid Retribution, 5 points in Frantic Summons, 8 points in Tyrant for 24% increased health, which is a huge amount, 5 points in River of Bones. There's a bug that goes on with this, at least we call it a bug. The Minion Leech actually counts towards your damage increase from Hollow Lich in the Lich tree, so the Minion Leech is giving you 400% bonus to all damage types from the 5 points in this node, which is a huge amount of damage, so these are a very important node to take. And then 5 points in Heresy for the int, so that you have even more ward retention. For items and idols, for the idols, you can really do whatever you want. For the Marrow Shards, you can get projectile speed increase, which means that the Marrow Shards themselves will go further before it breaks off into the bone splinters. However, it's not super important. It's definitely not mandatory, but it will increase the total range in which you'll be able to fire these things and actually be able to hit enemies, so you can go, even beyond your screen length. And the other type of idols is just getting increased health and flat health. So I went with a bunch of health idols. There are 1x3s that are Acolyte flavor, so if you want to get the flat amount of health from those as well, I believe they come with increased health. You can get that ratio there too, which I believe they give more and also allow room for like a 1x4 on the bottom, so that you can end up getting some increased spell damage at low life or anything else that you want. The reason that health idols are so important is because the more health you have, the more ward generation that you're going to have, which increases your survivability, and you already have great damage with this build, so that's why I went with those. Now, we are wearing 3 uniques, and some of them can be a bit tough. For instance, Enzanguius is going to steal 20% of your current health is lost every second, and it's going to be replaced by 20% of your missing health is gained as ward each second, and this is why we have so much ward right now, because we're getting a total of 20% from this and another 13 up to 15 you can get on the boots. We're getting 33% of our missing health as ward, which means 33% of our missing health is about 700. We have 700 ward generation per second. That's a lot. That's like having 700 health regen. So, I mean, you're talking about a lot of ward generation. And then with our int for the ward retention, we sit capped around about 4,000. But as you get more life, if you were to throw in 4 more health idols and get closer to 25, 2600 health, you could get 5, 6, 7,000 ward retention, depending on how much int you stack and other things, which is just a huge amount of ward generation. However, Enzanguius is total RNG. It does not drop from a specific boss. It's not gambleable. You just have to wait for it to drop to you from random mobs. Now, it is a low level. You only have to be level 23. And I have found that leveling new characters, sometimes you can get really lucky in between level 23 and like 40. You can actually have one of these drop for you. I feel like it's a pretty high chance. So if you run a lot of new characters, especially between the levels of 23 and say 50, there's a much higher chance for you to get it, because there's a lot less uniques in that. There's a lot less uniques in that pool for it to pull from when you're that low level, so you have a much higher chance to get it. And then we have the last steps of the living, which you can get on the level 70 timeline. I believe it's called Blood, Frost, and Death, and the boss will have a chance to drop these. I don't recall if it has to be empowered or not, but that is where you get the boots. And then we have the Chains of Euros, and what this is for is so that your potions are going to grant ward instead of health, and this way when you kill enemies and you walk over potions, instead of your health being replenished, and what that ends up leading to is you having less ward generation, it's just going to give you ward on top. Now that ward will degen, obviously, but it's much better than you losing that ward generation and just getting some HP, because you don't have a whole lot of things to reduce damage for HP. We didn't stack endurance. We don't even have fully capped resistances, so being able to keep that ward regeneration at all times is very powerful. And I'm just going to hover over all of the crafted items. They will once again be in the build planner, which will be on the written form link, and that link will be inside the description. And then for the character sheet, as you can see, we're sitting at 2100 life. We don't have fully capped resistances, but we do have some. We don't have much armor, but that will be increased when we have Dreadshade active. And then if you look at our damages, we just have huge amounts of damages, and this is because of that whole Lich conversion to power at 10 times its rate. You're getting these huge amounts. So our spell damage is 900%, our physical damage 850%, and these are very big things for you, especially once we get the Golem going here. We put Dreadshade on. Now look at our damages. Yeah, there you go. Whenever you're in this aura, and this is when you'll hit the hardest, you have almost 2000% spell damage. And remember, as his life starts to drop, which you'll have to have multiple stacks of Dreadshade, or he'll have to be hit by mobs to start getting it to go down, this will go up. But as it stands here, you can see his life starting to drop. We're finally going up, and we're going to end up with a massive amount. I keep forgetting that disappears after 20 seconds automatically. That's why I put it on autocast, is so that you don't have to worry about recasting all the time. Look at that, 2000% damage, and this is going to continue to go. It should give even a bigger effect that you had, so you should get close to 3000% damage before he actually disappears. And if there was a way to keep him at low life, boy, it would be amazing. but we'll just, oops, pop that back on him. And look at that. 3000% spell damage right before he kicked the can, which is just a huge amount of spell damage and physical damage for your spells to do, and that is why we have the Golem and Dreadshade, is for that 3000% increase, and it's what's going to allow you to do the most damage. Speaking of damage, the way that I have the skill set up and the way that I play the build is I have put Dreadshade and I put Wandering Spirits both on auto cast. I cast a Golem whenever I need him if I see his life about to completely disappear. Now Dreadshade auto targets the nearest minion to you, so you don't even have to worry about aiming. My mouse can be over here, but see, it just casted it on him again. I'll be over here, and boom, it's on him again. It keeps refreshing over there. So it'll auto target for you. You don't have to worry about aiming at him. If you had multiple minions, then you would want to aim because it's going to be the one that's closest to your mouse pointer. But as we have it here, it's on autocast, super easy. And then for Marrow Shards, you just cast it at your targets, and you get the damage that you would get from it. And as you can see here, we're getting the Marrow Shards hit different than the Bone Shards, but as you can see here, you're getting 125,000 damage crits, up to 135,000 damage. You can see that drops down when the Golem dies, and that's when you'll pop him back up and start it all over again, get a Dreadshade on him going, and you'll instantly be doing that damage again. Now the Marrow Shards don't hit as hard, so if you aim past the target, you're getting Marrow Shards damage. That's going to be the 20k crits, but if you aim at your feet, and you make that cone shape, those bone splinters are what's doing the massive amount of damage, and that's where you're getting these 80k crits, and they're going to go all the way up to 130k as the Golem starts to lose life and you gain all of that damage. And that's all you do. You just run around. You can aim this in a circle around you and get that AoE all around you to clear the entire screen without even having to move. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some more gameplay, and as always, stay safe, travelers.